Wait a minute. There was one other thing I wanted to do. Oh, yeah. I can't remember where we left off on focus shows. So I have no idea what number this is.
Well, we've only done what? Preacher, right?
Yeah, but I did something else.
Oh.
I think for the holidays a year or two ago, I combined all the Star Trek episodes into one while we were off. Yeah, so there's been 11. So this is 12. Numero 12. That's Spanish, kids. Actually, it's Italian. I shouldn't lie. Numero 12. All right, let's try a little fun for once. Huh? Here we go. Chris Scalzo here with
Matt Howell.
On this episode of the First Round, Matt and I are going to discuss Pierce Brosnan, and I guess Jackie Chan is in this film. It's called The Foreigner. It's interesting. It's directed by Martin Campbell, who did some of the better, some people consider later day James Bond films. So we'll jump into that. We're also going to discuss the horror film Happy Death Day, about a young lady who just keeps reliving this. Basically, Matt, it's the horror version of Groundhog Day, right? That's probably the easiest way to describe it. So there you go. And we're also going to pack in 2 top 5s, our 5 favorite slasher films, as well as our 5 favorite monsters. So that's a lot to get into, Matt.
It is.
So let's move this. Let's start the festivity. Yeah, here's a clip from The Foreigner, and not the cool Lou Grant kind.
I haven't been affiliated with the IRA for 30 years. When I fought hard against the violence. I went to prison for what I did and paid my debt. Now I serve the politics of both sides, trying to heal the wounds and bridge the divide. Again, my sincere condolences. There's nothing I can do.
What if your wife and daughter were killed by bomb?
I do everything in my power to get justice.
So, I've chosen you, Mr. Hennessy. You will tell me who killed my child.
Again, I don't know.
You will change your mind.
All right, so clearly Jackie Chan has a lovely young daughter who is killed. She is, I was going to say collateral damage, if that really wouldn't be an appropriate or fair thing to say. She is killed as a terrorist bombing. She is an innocent bystander. As a car bomb or motorcycle bomb, I guess would be more appropriate. So Jackie Chan is out for revenge, Matt. He's the old Secret Service super spy CIA agent who comes out of retirement to find out what happened and punish the people who killed his daughter. Except really that's almost ancillary plot to the entire film.
Mm-hmm.
So Martin Campbell had given us Casino Royale. He'd also directed GoldenEye, two considered fairly strong entries in the Bond franchise. But he also did the Zorro films, I believe, one of them being absolutely horrible.
Right.
So I got to admit, I was going into this one with a little bit of excitement. I was thinking maybe this is Jackie Chan's Liam Neeson moment, the older star, but he's more coming back to the action. It's going to be a lean and mean, down and dirty, gritty action film where Jackie Chan kicks a whole bunch of ass. That's really not what happens, Matt. This film is more about, I think, Pierce Brosnan as the former IRA member who has turned to politics. He is now, what is he? He's a government official, right? Who kind of brokers the communications between Ireland and the UK, right, or London and England. And I got to tell you, I actually enjoyed that storyline. The problem, I think, for me is that I think we needed to make a commitment here, and Martin Campbell doesn't, and he does a disservice then to both sides. If you want to do a Jackie Chan film, here's the thing too, Matt. Jackie Chan's probably in, what do you think, 50%, 40% of this film? 40?
You know, I would say probably, yeah. I was going to say 50 initially, but you're probably right, like 40, 45%.
And it's not even, and it's, I think he's truly disserved in this thing. I think that there's not enough Jackie. There's not enough action. When we do see him, we get some limited exposure to Jackie. Obviously, when we do see him, he's great. He's still got it. You know,
Right.
I think it's fairly very obvious that he's no longer doing his own stunts for the most part. I think there's a few times I noticed some stunt doubles. That wig, and whoever that was pretty bad. But still, the action scenes are interesting enough. There's just too few of them. So if you want, Martin, if you want to focus on the political narrative of this film, you know, I would have been all in. I thought it was interesting, especially the personal family dynamics that are going on as well, and the betrayal. Yeah, I could have seen that as being a really interesting film and something to really get into. What did you think, Matt? Where did you come down?
I don't think I was as critical as you were. I think you're right. It's more. I was surprised. See, I was expecting something in the kind of like a Taken Vein ripoff with Jackie Chan and like, you know, more martial arts kind of stuff and crazy stunts. And that's not really what we got. I mean,
Which you don't get, exactly.
You don't get that, yeah. But, you know, we did get more of a kind of a political pot boiler with the tensions between Northern Ireland, you know, internally and you know, the IRA and British politics and all that kind of stuff, which was interesting. I was actually kind of on board with that. And I did appreciate that Pierce Brosnan is not like a straight up villain. You know, so that was good as well. But you're right. I mean, Jackie Chan is not the focus on this, but I think it works more for me than it did for you. I appreciated that, you know, a lot of Jackie Chan's movies, almost all of them really, are, for lack of a better term, I won't say silly, but they are less than serious. I mean, they are supposed to be like these kind of really fun things. And this is really the first time that I can remember, not that I'm super up on his oeuvre, but really that I can remember that he's kind of like this silent, badass John Wick kind of killer kind of thing going on, who's aging kind of thing. So I did think the fact that he's kind of like this omnipresent threat, kind of like off screen, even when he's not there, I thought that worked. You know, so I thought it was a different way for him to kind of do that kind of stuff. And I thought it was more of a, you know, a tense, more grounded, I guess we could say, Jackie Chan film than what you would normally see in the past. And I was more on board with that than I thought I would be.
I think that's fine. It's just that the whole thing's marketed as a Jackie Chan movie. And I get what you're saying, that he's almost like a force of nature in the background and everything. He is the linchpin. Everybody is reacting to him. He is the fulcrum, if you will. He's the cause of everything that happens for the most part. But I don't know. I was hoping to get a little more. Listen, it's a solid film. It's a little, you know, unexceptionally directed. Everything is just, it's done by the book. Everything is delivered competently, and it's done well. For me, like when I was watching this thing, especially after walking out, I'm thinking this is a TNT favorite. This is something that's going to show up like on a Saturday at 6, you know, and if it's on,
might be selling it too high. It might be a TBS favorite.
But if it's on, you can have it on and we'll check it out. It's fine, you know. I think I got to come up with a different describer, because I use that entirely too much lately. That it's fine. It's fine.
But I mean, it applies in this case. I think it is fine, and I think what Chris is saying, you know, I'm going to speak for Chris because he obviously can't do it himself, but is. Yeah, I mean, Jackie Chan's not really a character in this. I think he nailed it on the head. He's more of like this force of nature. So he doesn't really have any personality. He's completely wooden. You know, he just kind of shows grief, but it's either grief or, you know, kind of robotic killing of people. And you know, he's not very compelling as a character, and it's not really focused on him as a character. He's really just kind of like, he's like the Clive Owen character from Bourne Supremacy. He's just kind of there, and he just kind of like this constant threat in the background. That just shows up more. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. You're right. I think it is just fine, and I think it is, you know, a TBS Turner Classic movie special that you're going to see on every, you know, Sunday for the rest of our lives. But I was actually surprised at how, I mean, it's good. It was surprisingly competent, because I did not have high hopes for this thing, and I at least came away, you know, middlingly entertained, which I think is pretty high praise from where I'm sitting.
Fair enough. I enjoyed the Pierce Brosnan storyline actually, and I think maybe part of me wonders if this thing was changed on the fly as they're going through. Like, maybe that might be a more interesting storyline as we focus more on Pierce Brosnan's politics than we do the 65-year-old Jackie Chan, or however old Jackie is at this point. I don't even know.
Yeah, I know. It's like they pulled something off of like the shelf, and they're like, "We've got this IRA potboiler political thriller. Jackie Chan's available. Let's put him in that as well."
Exactly.
We've got Jackie Chan under contract for one more movie. Let's stick him in this.
So, but So I don't know. Do you think it would have been a better film if we jettison the Jackie Chan storyline and just stick with Pierce Brosnan and his whole plot?
I hesitate to say yes, because I as much as I liked the kind of IRA stuff and the whole Pierce Brosnan, political intrigue and all that kind of stuff, I think it would be ultimately a forgettable movie. I don't think it would have been something that you would have been like, oh man, whatever they would have called this, Big Trouble in the IRA or something. That was a great movie. You wouldn't say that.
Big Trouble in Little Dublin.
Yeah, Big Trouble in Little Dublin, exactly.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I think putting the two together was a smart thing, at least because years from now, when we're still doing the show and we've gone up to like maybe 10 listeners at this point, regular listeners, we're gonna say, hey, you remember that? You remember that Jackie Chan movie with Pierce Brosnan in it? That wasn't that bad.
Watch, we're gonna be wrong, and it's gonna have some big cult following. It'll turn into a Shawshank, and it'll be considered a modern day masterpiece later.
And then we'll have some discussion. We'll have some lounge about how we just don't get it, how we just don't understand.
Which is entirely possible. All right. So if you had a chance to see The Foreigner, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. But Matt, where do you come down with your grade? I'm going to go C. I think that's appropriate.
I think I'm going to be a little bit more generous. I'm going to get the super gentleman C+. I'm going to give it the C+.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. Look at you. Again, feedback at thefirstrun.com. What were your thoughts? Was Jackie underserved? Are you in my camp? Did you want more Jackie Chan with his special set of skills? I think I would have enjoyed that a little more. All right, Matt, let's move on, though. Coming up on Blu-ray and DVD. Now, here's the thing. We had an issue where most of my DVD picks here are from the previous week because there's not as much coming up this week. It's upcoming Tuesday, which is Halloween, the 31st. So we're going to tell you what came out on the 24th, sprinkled in with some stuff coming up on the 31st. So first up for me, a film that I remember really liking as a kid, though I'm fairly sure it's horrible now. Matt, did you ever see They Call Me Bruce?
No, I have not. Is that about Bruce Campbell?
No, it's from I believe it's the 80s. It's an Asian guy, comes to the States, and people keep thinking he's Bruce Lee. So he ends up trying to help people out. He pretends to be Bruce Lee as well. It's a whole thing. It's basically a comedy martial arts film. I remember thinking it was very, very funny at the time. Probably isn't now. If you're a Walking Dead fan, obviously season 8 premiered this past Sunday, which I have yet to watch. But they released a Spike Walker special edition, so the discs are housed in a statue of the Spike Walker from season 7, if you remember from that. Coming up Tuesday, though, the 31st, Matt, The Dark Tower included some deleted scenes, a blooper reel, and about 5 featurettes. I was thinking about this. I'm like, do I want to watch The Dark Tower again?
No, you don't.
And I came back, no, I don't. No. Which is too bad.
No, not at all. Yeah.
You got Idris Elba, who is a magnetic screen presence, as well as McConaughey. Sometimes but even McConaughey doesn't McConaughey it enough for me in this film. I really think he should have gone totally over the top, but I just don't think he did.
Or at least been scary. I mean, he was scary one time. That was it. He was good when he was being scary, but that's it.
Yeah. Also coming up Tuesday is Dawn of the Dead, possibly Zack Snyder's best film. Let's not get into Sucker Punch. 2 disc set from Scream Factory includes a theatrical version, as disc 2 is the unrated version. Now, if you're not familiar, the difference between the two, this is what Scream Factory did. They put a whole other disc for the unrated version, which is in the beginning. I think it's in the beginning of the film. There's a scene where the woman who's naked is running up to them in a car. And in the U.S. version, because all the gore is totally fine in this film, In the U.S. version, they had blood splatter over the window, so you actually didn't see her breasts.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
But in the UK or international version, the blood splatter isn't there, so you see her naked.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
And that's what we need.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I in a way, I appreciate the fact that they covered up the nudity in the U.S. version because that's not why I don't need that. I'm not 15. All right, I want a well done, taught horror film.
What? Guess what though? Don't undersell it. You were 13 once. Don't take that away from them. Okay.
Fair enough. So anyway, you get both versions of the film and a whole bunch of featurettes. I mean, Scream Factory really delivered on this. So include some deleted scenes. So if you're with Zack Snyder's commentary, so if you're a fan of Dawn of the Dead, the remake, and I think you should be, you can pick up this ultimate version there from Scream Factory, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
An Inconvenient sequel was released last week on Blu-ray. Of course, the sequel to an Inconvenient movie, the Al Gore propaganda piece. Because we all know
it's all a lie. Yep.
BS. Living here in Tampa.
It's all for Big Green.
That's right. And of course, a film we both really enjoyed, Annabelle Creation, is being released.
Yeah, surprisingly, we enjoyed it.
Yeah, includes a director's commentary, some deleted scenes as well. So a far superior film to the original Annabelle. It's a quick, good, as I said earlier, down and dirty little horror film. It does its job and it does it well. So if you're into that, check it out. Criterion's release of Personal Shopper came out as well, on my list of my favorite films of 2017 so far, starring a perfectly cast Kristen Stewart in her best performance. Yes, I'm serious about that.
I've heard you.
Yeah. Sorry?
Yeah, you really talked that one up.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really interesting. You should check it out. And then it's a 2K digital master supervised by the director of photography, improved by the director. A new interview with the director as well. And then, of course, Matt, the big release from last week, War for the Planet of the Apes, includes a Blu-ray, DVD, digital copy, deleted scenes with optional commentary by Matt Reeves, a bunch of featurettes as well, and full audio commentary by Reeves. So you're a fan of the Apes film. I think it's a solid wrap-up, though potentially the weakest of the three, I think. But still, really interesting.
I think you're right.
Your straight to DVD pick of the week, Matt. In the house at the First Run household, it has been not quite nonstop, but since the Yankees lost in the ALCS, we've shifted focus now to the Hallmark Christmas movie season. We are doing our preparations in the house. Mrs. Scalzo is a Hallmark Christmas movie fan. We watched them all last year, and we are prepping to watch them again now.
Halloween's not even here yet. Halloween's not even here yet.
They started yesterday at 2.
Oh my God, Chris, you put your foot down. You watch horror movies until Halloween comes up, and then you're done.
I am. So, but yesterday we watched the preview special, about 45 minutes long, with a bunch of people from Full House. Cameron, what's her name there? And
Candace Cameron.
Candace Cameron, Jodie Sweetin made an appearance, as did Laura Loughlin, because they all have films in the Christmas special.
Very nice.
And so we were plotting out. We watched all the little previews, and the lovely Miss Scalzo wrote down which ones we will be checking out.
Oh.
And then there's another whole batch on the Hallmark Mystery and Thriller movie channel. But they're just straight Christmas romance movies. We got to watch that one next. So,
okay.
I like it because I get to do my Mystery Science Theater thing while they're running.
I'm sure she really appreciates that.
Yeah, that doesn't last long. But last year I had quite a few good zingers. I rather enjoyed it.
Okay.
So, but that's what's happening. So anyway, you're straight to DVD pick of the week, Matt, as I digress. A Puppy for Christmas. After her destructive new puppy, Buster, causes Noah to lose her boyfriend, her apartment, and her job. Man, that's a destructive dog. Noelle spends the holidays on a family farm with a rugged coworker, Liam. When her old life in the city comes crawling back to her, Noelle must choose between the safe, successful world she's left behind or an uncertain, unpredictable, and exciting future with Buster and Liam.
All right.
A Puppy for Christmas. So, Matt, what are we streaming?
I'm going to cheat, Chris. I'm going to cheat. One of the big cultural events of the past few years just came out yesterday. And I think, spoiler alert, we may be talking about this a little bit. I'm, of course, talking about Stranger Things Season 2 is out on Netflix right now. If you haven't seen Stranger Things, you've been living under a rock. You really should go out, check it out. It is a great kind of pastiche of 80s horror, Stephen King, science fiction. It's actually incredibly well acted, even though it has a bunch of kid actors. Really, really good, tight horror sci-fi show that's got some heart to it. And season 2 came out, and everybody in their minds is really losing their minds and just freaking out about this. So go check it out. And full disclosure, I haven't seen them all yet, but I'm that confident that you're going to like it.
Yeah, we're actually bringing back the first run focus, where we focus on things outside of movies. The first episode will be recorded later today. We'll be discussing Stranger Things Season 2, as well as Mindhunter Season 1. We'll be doing one episode per week. So first up will be, obviously, episode 1 of each show. I'm rather excited to talk about that. I got to tell you, Matt, well, I don't want to tell you. We'll save it for the show. You'll have to listen to the first run focus. Episode 12 coming up. It'll be released on Halloween. So there you go. Enjoy that.
There you go.
All right, let's move on, Matt. Let's talk about Happy Death Day.
Look, I know this isn't going to make any sense, but I have already lived through this day. Twice.
Tree.
No, believe me, I know it sounds totally crazy, but this is happening to me. I swear to God.
Tree, I'm sure it feels like you're living
Okay, you made me a cupcake for my birthday, right? You're about to give it to me, and then later on tonight, there's a surprise party.
Who told you? Was it back?
No, nobody told me. That's what I mean. Don't you see? I know what is going to happen before it happens. Lori, somebody's going to kill me tonight.
All right, Matt. So I think that clip pretty much sums it up, but why don't you tell the folks at home and on the road what's going on in Happy Death Day?
Well, a young college student named Tree wakes up in a dorm room after a night of partying, does the walk of shame, runs into a series of people throughout her lives. It's her birthday, and then on their way home, or way to a party, she is killed by a masked killer. And then as soon as she dies, bum, 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 she wakes up and she's back in the very same dorm room. And that process repeats over and over and over again. She leaves, masked killer somewhere within the day kills her, and it starts over repeat. So her goal becomes to try and stop the cycle, break the cycle, find out who the killer is, and keep living her life instead of being horribly, horribly killed over and over and over again.
There you go. Any questions for me? No?
No, that's it. That's basically it. So I think we've talked about that movie.
All right, good. Let's move on. So there's a lot of things going on in this thing. First off, I just realized, this is written by Scott Lobdell. You know who Scott Lobdell is?
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I did see that in the opening credits. I was like, oh, Scott Lobdell. So I was like, that guy writes comic books.
Yeah, he wrote a bunch of X-Men comics in the 90s. He came up with Generation X, I believe, that series. That was his baby as well. What was his name? Chris Bachalo?
Yeah.
Is that how you say it? Anyway, so I didn't even know that until I was putting the notes together for the show. So anyway, here's the thing, Matt. All right, I really enjoyed this thing. This whole thing was a lot more fun than I anticipated it was going to be. I was thinking, well, is this horror Groundhog Day mashup really going to work? And it does, and it works exceptionally well. This thing is a ton of fun. It's not that the scares were solid for me, if not unspectacular. But I still, I think that Christopher Landon, the director, does a pretty good job of kind of ratcheting up the tension at times. And I think the mystery of this was pretty good, though. I called who it was pretty much from the beginning. But still, it was still interesting to see how the whole thing played out, and it's a lot of fun. It's a good little roller coaster ride, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's because it's also very smart, Matt. It's winking at you the whole time, which I appreciated. Right. It does a lot of kind of those nods to the horror genre, but kind of makes them ridiculous. The fact that the killer is the campus mascot, which is a baby. I mean,
yeah.
So, which is interesting. And also, too, there's a nice moment where, and I was trying to see if you can remember, though, we're a couple weeks out now, when she wakes up in the kids' dorm room, there's a Mystery Science Theater poster, and there's a couple other posters in there, too, that I feel like, oh, this thing's right in my wheelhouse. These are my people.
Really?
But now, of course, I couldn't recall what the other ones were.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this thing. I think it blends the horror and the Groundhog Day conceit really well. And yeah, I think Jessica Roth too. She's the lead. She's the one that plays Tree. I think she's fantastic in this.
Mm-hmm.
I think she really delivers. You have to be comedy. They say comedy is the hardest thing to do, right? And I think she is able to kind of carry that thread throughout the film while being scared and trying to save her own life. I was really impressed with her performance in this, and I think she's pretty new, right? I've never heard of her before this. I don't think maybe she's done some TV and stuff, but I think that's basically it. So
yeah,
good on her.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised by this film. I was not expecting much. I even thought I thought we were going to skip this movie, but then we started seeing some of the reviews come in. The tomato score was decent. The audience score was decent. So we're like, you know what, let's go check this thing out. And like you said, I really enjoyed it. As anybody who listens to the show can hear me rant many times throughout the archives how I don't like horror or comedy in my horror. I think it's really, really hard to pull off. You end up doing a disservice to one or both while you're trying to do it. And you know what? I'm completely with you. I think they stuck more with the conceit of Groundhog Day and the kind of ridiculousness of it. And they weren't necessarily trying to be scary all the time, but they did. When they did want to ratchet up the tension, they were really good at doing that. So I appreciated that whole thing. And honestly, you know, even the whole cast, I mean, it seems like they're all having a lot of fun, and it's all coming. You can tell it's kind of all coming through in the performances. And, you know, I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And I think this is, you know, Halloween's on a Tuesday. I doubt a lot of people will be partying, but if you have a date or something, this is probably the horror movie you want to go see based off what's out there in the theaters right now. This is something that would be a good little Halloween date night film to go see. I think it was a lot of fun.
Jigsaw's not doing it for you?
Jigsaw, well, it always makes me nervous when they still had a review embargo and it had not been reviewed the day it was being released. So, you know, that's always a bad sign.
Well, it's out now, and the reviews are not spectacular. I don't think any of the Saw films, though. That'd be interesting. Is any of the Saw films broken 50%, even 40?
I have no idea. Maybe the first one. I think the first one, they gave Carrie Elways some love, so I got to at least imagine it would break 40.
Interesting. 49. Look at you.
There you go. There you go.
So, all right. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this thing. It was a lot of fun. I agree with you, too. I think it would be a good date film because it's not straight horror. It's not a ton there's no real gore in it, right? So
yeah.
There's always quick camera cuts right before anything happens. So, yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it. Where are you coming down letter grade for the Death Days?
You know what? I'm going to be pretty generous. I'm going to give it a B+. I'm going to give it a B+ for what it is. I think it's a good, solid, fun little horror film.
I did the B, so it's like a half a grade away from you every time.
Yeah,
or third.
Well, we're trying to mix it up a little bit here on this show. You're always complaining we're too alike, so I'm trying to. And I can. And before we move on to our next segment, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
So
yes.
we as you know, Chris and I have a gentleman's bet going on right now, and
right.
We have a gentleman's bet. Thor Ragnarok is not out yet, but Chris rated that Thor Ragnarok would get a 90% on RT. I said 88%, and right now it has been certified fresh. It's only 120 reviews, so we probably still got another at least 100.
104 actually, right now.
Okay, that's 104. So we've probably got another 250 reviews to come. But it's certified fresh at 95%. So I think I may already have to concede, like election night, that I may have lost this first round.
We'll see. I am looking. I don't want to sound. I feel confident. That's all I want to say. I feel confident that my 90% will hold out. Remember, it's Price is Right rules. So if it ends up being 89, I am screwed.
That's very true. That's very true. But that's the thing. Just think about it. We were talking about this earlier in the week, and if this review, if this holds at 95%, this will be the highest rated, higher than Iron Man, higher than Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy's Winter Soldier, higher than any Marvel movie by at least 1 percentage point if this 95% holds.
And the Thor franchise, the third wing of the MCU for me has been the weakest. It's the bottom of the barrel. It's the bottom of the well.
Yeah.
I would watch Iron Man 2 a dozen times before I would watch any of the
That's
Thor films.
no. I would watch Thor 2 before I watched Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2
I wouldn't,
is bad
because of Robert Downey Jr. is enough to push me over the top.
Oh
I
God,
hate the Thor films, especially that first one is just.
it's boring. It's not bad. It's just incredibly bland and milk toasted boring for a superhero movie. Which
I was
may be
thinking
the
outside of
worst
Iron Man. I think outside of Iron Man, almost those entire first wave films are all like that. The
Not
first Thor
great.
film isn't good.
Yeah.
The first Captain America film is not that good.
No, it's not. It's really not.
So
with you.
anyway, and Avengers is okay.
Yeah, I mean, Avengers, suffers from hindsight of what's come out later. But I remember I had a hell of a lot of fun when Avengers came out. I mean, that kind of blew me away.
I think it's probably fair. But anyway, round one looks solidly in my pocket at this point, but we shall see.
I better at least keep it close here.
What's coming up next?
If I
Orient Express or Killing of a Sacred Deer, which one's next?
it's got to be Orient Express because I think that comes out before Killing of a Sacred Deer. I think.
All right, we shall see. I'm kind of curious how that's all going to turn out.
I better win around it. I better keep this close because I'm gonna be very pissed if after 4 rounds it's over. So
November 10th is Murder. So let's see when Killing a Sacred Deer though. That one's gonna take a while because I think that's gonna get a slow release, right? That's gonna be a slow roll.
Yeah, but the critics will see it.
That's true. 75% right now, and it's got 107 reviews for Killing of a Sacred Deer. Let's see, Matt. What is that? Official release date, October 20th. So we don't lock in the score until noon on the day it's officially released, right?
Right.
So Killing of a Sacred Deer, I'm at 78. You're at 62. So at this moment, I am out of Killing of a Sacred Deer.
You're technically closer, but thank you, Price is Right, because you went over.
So we'll see if that shakes out. And then let's see. Let's go. Let's see if there's any early reviews for Murder on the Orient Express. Not available. Too soon.
Not available. Okay.
That's November 10th. We're about 2+ weeks out on that. 2-3 weeks out. That's interesting that there's no reviews. That makes me a little nervous. What did I come down on that? 63? You had 65. Oh, okay.
We're gonna be in trouble. What happens if we both go over?
It's nothing. It's no good. It's
okay. That's just a wash. The round's a wash.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Let's move on then, Matt. Let's discuss either our 5 favorite monsters or 5 favorite slashers. Let's start off with 5 with a film, Matt, that was not allowed to be included. All right.
Okay.
Here's a clip.
Unless somebody has got a better idea, we'll proceed with Dallas's plan.
What? And end up like the others? No, you're out of your mind.
You got a better idea?
Yes. I say that we abandon the ship. We get the shuttle and just get the hell out of here. We take our chances and just hope that somebody picks us up.
The shuttle won't take 4.
Well, then why don't we draw straws?
I'm not drawing any straws. I'm for killing that goddamn thing right now.
Okay. Well, let's talk about killing it. We know it's using the air shafts. Will you listen to me, Parker? Shut up!
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
It's using the air shafts.
We don't know
That's
that.
the only way. We'll move in pairs. We'll go step by step and cut off every bulkhead and every vent until we have it cornered, and then we'll blow it out into space. Is that acceptable to you?
It means killing it. Acceptable to me.
Obviously, it means killing it. But we have to stick together.
So listening to that clip, Matt, from Alien, I think it's an exceptionally well acted scene. I think you really get the pathos and the fear and, and in between, especially Yaphet Kotto in that scene, I think is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I listened to the thing a couple times because I was trying to edit it and put it together because I wanted to pull the F word out of that scene. Did you notice? That's how good I am at editing. Didn't even notice it's gone, did you?
Didn't notice, I didn't even know that was gone.
2 films were off limits, Matt. All right. From the Thing and Alien.
From the monster movie list, right?
From the monster movie list, yes, could not be selected. So let's start off with the monsters. You all right with that?
Yeah, let's start off with the monsters.
Okay. So I'll go first. I'll give you the ultimate number one. Then we'll swap off or switch, I guess probably the proper term for the slashes.
Yes.
For the monsters, my numero cinque is Guillermo del Toro is Pan's Labyrinth, specifically the Pale Man. One of the creepier, more disturbing monsters in recent memory for me. I absolutely adore Pan's Labyrinth. If I had to do a top 20 films of the past 20 years, it's got to be in there. It has to be. It's a brilliant little film about the Spanish Civil War. No, it's not. It's after the not Spanish Civil War. It's after the fascist. I guess it would be. Either way, I'm really not good on my Spanish history. But a young girl is her parents were killed, and she moves in with this bad guy who's part of the bad guys. I've done a lot of research on this. And she escapes into a dream world to escape reality. And one of this is that there's that great scene where she's at the table and she can't touch the food. And there's the pale man and he has his eyeballs in his hands and he has to move his hands up to his face to see and all kinds of creepy, my man. So for me, the Pale Man is my number 5.
All right. Oh, so you wouldn't pick actual monsters. Okay. Well, I can work that out. I can make that work. Okay,
well, no, I think it's, right. No, I don't know if I guess yes and no. I mean, I picked the movies with my favorite I don't know.
It's okay. It's okay.
You'll see as the list progresses. So go ahead.
All right. So my list is going to be a controversial list. And this is what I'm going with. Now I realize this is technically an alien, but I'm going with it anyway. I'm going with Under the Skin, which is a very disturbing film that really has stuck with me. I think it's kind of divisive if you look at it online about what people think about it, but essentially it's about Scarlett Johansson plays an alien that is taken over, is basically in a human suit and is driving around Glasgow, Scotland, picking up and seducing men so that she can bring them back to her lair and they can be consumed for food or something for the rest of her species. Something happens. Who freaking knows? But just the whole way that this thing is shot is extremely artsy. And I don't mean that as a in a bad way. It turns out that Scarlett Johansson, a lot of the interviews with men that she does, a lot of them were improv. Like she would literally drive up to random men in Glasgow and start flirting with them to see how they would react, and it was just filmed and used in the actual in the film. I did not know that. Yeah, the whole thing is they don't really explain a lot of what's going on. It's a lot of really just strange imagery, and it's very not. They convey a lot just through the dialogue and the lack of dialogue and just the imagery that you have of what's going on. It's a very disturbing film, and it does stick with you. And I love it. So if you haven't seen it, it's definitely not for everybody. You're gonna see some pretty disturbing things on all, points of the spectrum. But if you kind of are into something that's a little more, it's going to make you kind of think about it and something that's going to stick with you, I definitely recommend Under the Skin.
Yeah, I love that film. And one of my favorite scores for the past 10 plus years or so as well, from Mika Levy. That score, I haven't used this term in a long time, Matt. So just for you, that score is haunting.
Thank you. But it would apply. It applies in this. So I'm okay with that. Yeah,
she also did the score for Jackie, which is equally good. But yeah, I love Under the Skin. But it's a slow burn. It's hard to describe, and I could see people walking out of that saying, "What is that crap?" But I'm telling you, man, if it hits you, it gets its hooks in you. You're done. All right, my number 4 then, Matt, is It Follows. Whatever the hell that creepy thing is, and It Follows. Just the whole conceit of the film. To this day, Matt, when I think about it, I get goosebumps. I'm planning on watching it again at some point this weekend for the Halloween season. But we both really enjoyed that film. A great 80s synth score as well. It's very strong, good performances by the cast. It's set in this weird, I don't know, Matt, what would you call it? Like alternate dimension type thing. But there's just little teases of what's going, of where they
Yeah.
are and why and stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird, but it just adds it. What it does, it just adds to the texture of the film and how things are just off.
Right.
So it's what's so brilliant about the monsters that it can look like anybody, even somebody you know, and it's just constantly coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the whole the conceit, just the core idea is just terrifying to me. So it's my number 4.
All right. So my number 4, maybe the best amalgamation of, hey, I like monsters. Let's throw as many of them as we can into one film and just see what happens. And I'm talking about a film that was shelved for a really long time, and I never thought it would see the light of day. And I was happy that it did. And I'm talking about Joss Whedon's Cabin in the Woods. It's a send-up of, kind of, I hesitate to say parody, but it's definitely a loving homage to all of the kind of...
not mocking.
It's not mocking, but it recognizes the kind of cliches and tries to answer them, why the characters are the way that they are. And, it's kind of got this whole funny thing with it, but it's also got this like horrifying, kind of makes you uncomfortable aspect of it too, which is perfectly what you would want in a horror movie. But essentially, 5 group of friends, they go out to a cabin in the woods, and they literally are being controlled or under attack by some kind of secret organization that has access to basically every monster that you've ever seen, and they unleash them one at a time on this unsuspecting band. And it's actually a lot of fun. If you haven't seen it, it's very meta, so you got to have some tolerance for that. But if you do, you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting and fun pick. I really enjoy Cabin in the Woods as well. Good. My number 3 then is The Blob, but the 80s remake.
Yes.
Not the original one. The 80s remake is exceptionally well done, and it's not like it's kind of a cheap knockoff or just one of those lazy, remakes. It's the technology and the special effects had really advanced, obviously, to that point, but it has some fantastic practical effects. And if you're a practical effects guy, I think obviously, Matt, we think the pinnacle of that has got to be The Thing. I think for practical effects for horror films.
Yes, it is.
But next up to it, I think for me would be The Blob.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's a lot of fun. It's scary. It's creepy. And it just hits all the right notes. If you haven't seen The Blob in a long time, I'm telling you, check it out this Halloween. You will not be disappointed. It's a lot of fun. It's great. It's just really good.
Yep. I'm 100% on board with Chris. I didn't put it on my list. It is in my honorable mentions, but the only reason I didn't put it on my list is because I gushed about it a couple weeks ago, about The Blob 85. But I'm telling you, man, when I was a kid watching that, and one of the things you never see in horror movies is little kids getting killed. And if you do see them getting killed, it's usually quick and off screen. When that kid gets eaten by the blob and he slowly gets melted and he's screaming for like 20 minutes, it impacted young Sir Howell. And so it's definitely something stick with me for at least that.
Nice. There you go.
Check it out. All right. So my number 3, I decided to go with one of the classic monsters. I'm going with a werewolf, and I know I've talked about this many times before, but I'm going to do it again, damn it. Is An American Werewolf in London, John Landis's film from the 70s about a young American tourist and his friend get attacked by a werewolf out in the Scottish moors in the Highlands, and he slowly turns into a werewolf while he is in London on the mend. There's not... I appreciate about this film is that I think Landis knew his limitations, and he kind of leaned into them as far as the special effects were concerned. Transformation scene is still a masterpiece of practical effects. It's still probably the most convincing transformation scene you're going to see on film. But just the way that Landis did it, keeping the werewolf out of sight, you don't really see it because it's kind of like the Jaws thing. It's scarier when you don't see it, and you just get these little glimpses of it, and funny at the same time, kind of this gallows humor thing. So it's a really well done classic and the best werewolf movie that you could watch if you want to see a werewolf movie.
There you go. I would agree. That's an honorable mention for me. My classic then is my number 2, which is Boris Karloff and The Mummy. Well, just The Mummy in general. I'm not so much the Brandon Fraser films or the Tom Cruise remake now, which I still haven't seen, but just the original the original Universal with Boris Karloff. It just creeped me out to no end when I was a kid. I don't know what it was. It just always stuck with me. It's a tight, like 70 minutes, but it is exceptionally well done. If you haven't seen the original Mummy, I can't recommend it enough. I'm not even sure what it is, Matt, about it. It's just gives me the willies whenever I would watch it. So I had to pay homage to one of my original loves.
You had to get a Universal Classic Monster in there somewhere.
Yep.
There you go. All right, so my number 2 is my vampire pick, and I went back and forth with a couple, but I decided to go with this one. This is the OG. This is even before Bela Lugosi, and I'm talking about Nosferatu, the vampire. It's a silent film. Basically, they didn't have the rights to use the actual Dracula story, so they kind of tweaked it. It's really is the Dracula story, but not quite. But I'm telling you, there's to this day, there's a small piece of me that thinks that Max Schreck actually was a vampire in this film, because the makeup effect is so creepy, and just the way it's filmed, and just the way he glides through the frame, it just looks completely otherworldly. It's still, I cannot believe, with everything that we have out that's come out and how much film has advanced, how effective and just unsettling the film is. And if you want a piece of what I'm talking about, this should not be hard to find, because it's out of I'm pretty sure it's out of copyright, so you can basically find it anywhere. You can probably watch it for free on YouTube. But do a search for Max Schreck on set of Nosferatu, and there's a picture of him sitting there between takes in this castle. And I swear to God, he never broke character, and he looks like the most terrifying human being you've ever seen in your life in full makeup.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. Yeah, good. And I didn't even occur to me, but I wish it had. That's a good one. Matt, then my number 1.
Yeah,
I went with Jaws. I think it's such an exceptionally well done film that I decided to go with the big shark, the big granddaddy of shark movies. The key to the success of the film, obviously, like you said, is the fact that it's you never really see it. It's just kind of this presence, and that was, of course, as everybody knows, due to technical issues with the mechanical shark. So Spielberg gets around that by filming it, by rarely putting it on screen, which just ratchets up the fear. Really, Jaws, I think, is just a perfect film.
It is.
So it absolutely is. So I decided to make it my number 1 favorite monster movie, because it is. He's a shark. It's a real thing.
Yep.
But that thing is a monster.
It is. It is definitely. I put it on my honorable mentions. You're right. I mean, best thing that ever happened to Spielberg is that shark didn't work out, didn't look real, and he was forced to kind of improvise, and maybe one of his best films because of it. Because that is a fantastic film, and like you said, the only thing on here that's real. So you could be out in the water and get your leg bitten off. So think about that, kids. That's why I stay away from the beach, among many other reasons. So my number 1 was lower on Chris's list, and I know there's a lot of deserving films, but I put It Follows, because I'm very confident that this thing is going to become part of the canon. It's going to be a new classic. This is something that is going to have legs and stay out there forever. Just like Chris said, just the entire atmosphere of just, what time period is this thing supposed to be taking place? Everybody dresses like it's the 80s. They drive in 80s cars. They have tube TVs, yet they also have these like e-readers and phones that like we don't even have now. So it's very strange. And just the way it's shot. I mean,
yeah,
just that constant looking in the background that there's somebody, that it's around there somewhere. It could be anybody. And I think still one of the best scenes when they're pulling into that school and the camera is spinning around inside the car and it keeps swooping around, and you see in the distance that woman walking, and then it loops back around and she's closer, and none of them are paying attention, and it swoops around and she's closer again. It's so good. And even while it's not mostly jump scares, it does have a couple of really effective jump scares in it that made me, when I literally jump and say, oh crap, in my seat in the theater. So great film. If you haven't seen it, you definitely have to check it out. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm surprised it ended up being so high on your list. I mean, I know it's really good, but
yeah, I just really think it's something that's going to appreciate and age well. I think that's something that's going to be, people are going to be discovering that for a long time.
Fair enough. Honorable mentions for you then.
So my honorable mentions, I said Jaws and The Blob. Near Dark was my other vampire contender, which I've talked about a lot. Catherine Bigelow's first film. It's a great, nasty little vampire film, although it does not age well in a few places, so just keep that in mind. Jeepers Creepers, I always thought those were fun movies. Now, unfortunately, we find out the guy's a pedophile or a sex offender or something, so that's not so great. But I thought they were fun little horror movies or monster movies. The Mist, very effective in parts. The Descent, which we've talked about many times. It is a movie that still creeps me out to this day, but I didn't put it on my list. Probably creeps me out of any of these films the most. Didn't put it on my list though because the monsters aren't the part that creeps me out. It's being stuck in that damn cave in the dark is what freaks me out the most. But very uncomfortable film. And then I had to throw a big monster in there, so I put in Cloverfield because that's actually pretty intense and scary in parts.
There you go. It's pretty similar to mine. I had The Descent, Gremlins, American Werewolf in London, Frankenstein, the original, Cloverfield, The Host, The Babadook, The Mist, and then Cronenberg's The Fly.
All right. Woo!
Fun times. All right, Matt, let's move on then. Let's do the slashers. And we still had one left, which was what again?
Spiritual, like spirits.
Supernatural. All right, so we're going to have to do that next week after Halloween.
Ruined.
But that's what happens.
What are you going to do?
So, all right, so you go first then. What's your fifth favorite slasher?
My fifth favorite slasher is maybe one of the quintessential 80s slashers, and there's going to be a lot of 80s slashers on here because that's the peak of the genre, let's be honest. Is Sleepaway Camp, where a bunch of teenagers, they go to a sleepaway camp and they are stalked and killed creatively by a killer, and that ending is something that's a classic. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but that is a classic of the genre that people still discuss to this day.
Oh, entirely is. The ending, Matt, makes the entire film.
Right.
It's almost unremarkable. You know, it's good, but it's that ending that puts that thing over the top. It's an honorable mention for me, though I think I've gushed about Sleepaway Camp a few times in the past.
Yes.
So my number 5 then is a lesser known slasher film, and that is The Prowler. Are you familiar with The Prowler at all?
I've heard of it, so tell me about it.
So it's a it happens. God, what is it? World War I, end of World War II. Okay. There's a guy in fatigues. Somebody's getting married, and he kills somebody. He kills, and then he disappears. And then later on, there's going to be another party at this hotel or something, whatever it is, and he comes back and starts killing people again. It's not a remarkable or new story. It's just that in the realm of slasher films, it's exceptionally well done, and it doesn't have a big. A lot of people don't know about it, so that's why I wanted to give it some love and made it my number 5. If you like slasher films, you may not be familiar with The Prowler, but it is a great example of the genre, so you really should check it out. So I made it my number 5 to give it a little love.
All right, very good. All right, so my number 4 is again kind of a prototype of the genre, one of the early examples. It's Black Christmas. It's about a sorority house where some of the sorority girls stay at the house over Christmas break, and they are obviously stalked and killed by somebody in the house. The thing that stuck out with me about this is that it's one of the ones where a lot of the 80s slashers are tongue-in-cheek, but this one was actually pretty nasty. It's not particularly hilarious. It's kind of mean-spirited, and it's again it's something that as it kind of progresses, it's something that'll stick with you as you go through it. But a good example of the 80s genre.
There you go. Interesting pick. My number 4 then is The Burning. Have you seen The Burning?
I have not seen The Burning.
So a bunch of camp kids are screwing around with this. Is he the custodian? I can't remember now. But they play a practical joke on this guy. They go up to his cabin, and they put like a skull in his bed with a candle on it or something. I don't know what happens. Anyway, they spook him. He wakes up. He's a drunk. He covers himself in alcohol or something. Anyway, he gets lit on fire, and he storms out of the cabin, and he ends up going to a mental institution. Of course, he gets out, he goes back, and he starts to kill all the camp kids. But again, Another maybe not as well known part of the film in the genre, released by Scream Factory a couple years ago, stars Jason Alexander. He plays a big role in it, which is fun. George Costanza, if you will. Yeah. So The Burning, it's again another example of a very well done slasher film. The guy's name is what's his name? It's like a famous name. They made a documentary about him, even though it's not real. Not Crowley. I can't remember now. Damn it. Anyway, The Burning is just it's got everything you're looking for, Matt. It's the 80s. It's got the camp counselors, right? It's got the weird scarred guy who's killing everybody. And it's another one that deserves to be seen as not as well known. So it's my number 4 is The Burning. I've always really enjoyed it. It's just really well done for the genre. So.
Yeah. All right. So my number 3, I struggled with this, where to exactly put this one, but I definitely wanted to put it somewhere. I wasn't sure if I should put it in Monster, if I wasn't sure if I should put it in Supernatural, but I decided to put it in where it's usually lumped in. It's the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which obviously this is a film that everybody knows, but essentially it's about a child killer and pedophile who was murdered by a group of parents who comes back and terrorizes their children in dreams. And obviously, if you die in the dream, you die in real life. This, is obviously a classic 80s slasher film. And again, this one is, as the further entries in the series, they got more and more campy and jokey, and they really kind of lost all their scares. This first one's still very scary and very nasty, and it always freaked me out when I was a kid about the fact that you were being killed in your dreams and there was nothing you could do about it. Like if Jason or Michael Myers was after you, at least you could run away, but there was no way of getting rid of Freddy, and I did not want to sleep. So it's definitely still a pretty scary, effective film.
Now, he wasn't a molester in the first film, right? He was just a child killer, or is it more kind of the subtext? Was that?
I think that's the subtext, but you're right. They never come out right out and say that he's a pedophile. But I think that's the implication, that he was doing more than just killing them. So
well, they go all in on that in the remake, which is not good.
It's to its detriment. It's not good at all.
And which is too bad, because I think Jackie Earle Haley did a pretty good job. I thought he was a good casting choice for that. Yeah. My number 3, I think this qualifies, Matt, is the French film Inside.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So the film opens with an accident, and there's a woman who is pregnant, but and her husband is killed, but she's okay, and the baby seems okay. We flash forward to after the accident, she's home, and there's a woman at the door, just wants to come in and talk to her. And we don't know what's going on or why. But this woman is stalking our star and terrorizing her. Eventually she gets in the house. Things go horribly, horribly awry. Inside is terrifying, but it's also one of the more violent and gory films you will see. If you do not have a stomach for that stuff, do not watch Inside. But if you do and if you can handle it, I can't recommend it enough. I know we had a viewing party of this at my old apartment at one point, and everybody was freaked out by it. Inside is, for me, it's part of that, that French new wave of horror. And everybody likes Martyrs, and whatever the other one was. But for me, Inside is the pinnacle of that French new wave horror. That thing is just freaky as all hell.
Yeah, that is a freaky movie. I personally prefer Martyrs to Inside, but the other one you're thinking of is High Tension, and that's probably the third of those 3.
I like High Tension. I don't have the issues that some people have with the ending, just because it makes no sense. Yeah. But still,
whatever.
I enjoy it. And I like Alexander Asia's work. He hasn't done anything in a while, has he? His remake of The Hills Have Eyes, I think, is a better film than the original.
Yeah, by far. That is for sure.
So, all
right. So my number 2, I think, is really the only one of the few films on our list that actually has a Criterion entry. I'm talking about Michael Powell's Peeping Tom, which came out in the late 60s, and is maybe considered the first slasher film, although what I would count as the true first slasher film is on my honorable mentions. But this is basically a story about a serial killer who lives in London, basically follows women around, kills them, and then he films them while he's they're dying, basically capturing the final expression on their face while they after killing them. It's a very creepy, very of its time kind of film, but it's a very well done classic that I don't think a lot of people are really aware of. So if you haven't seen Peeping Tom, you should really go check it out because it's really a well done, disturbing film.
No, that's a great pick. That's good. Yeah, it's in my honorable mentions as well. But yeah, you're right, and it's a Criterion release for Christ's sake. So, and I think they just re-released it on Blu-ray. They'd lost the license for a while, but I think that like last year or early this year they were able to re-release it on Blu. So you can pick that up at the next sale. My number 2 is Black Christmas. Bob Clark's Christmas horror film. Same guy who did A Christmas Story. So try and square that. But yeah, it's I've always really liked Black Christmas. There hasn't been a really strong release of it here domestically on Blu-ray up until the Scream Factory release from last year. Great picture, great quality. They did a great job putting that thing together. Margot Kidder is in that as well. Olivia DeHussey. So yeah, it is a classic of the genre, man, as well. And I think it's one of the better, if not one of the best slasher films of all time. Maybe domestically, it would be my number 1. So clearly my number 1 is not a U.S. film.
All right.
But
very good.
It's really good, really creepy from start to finish. So there you go.
All right. So my number 1 has probably been on lists several times throughout the show. This is what happens when you do 300 plus shows and you like horror movies. But my number 1 is Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, this movie freaked me the hell out when I watched it. And the reason that it's so effective is that it seems so real. And I cannot stress that enough. I mean, this almost seems like Tobe Hooper was somehow invisible and following this band of cannibals while they terrorized these teenagers that had the unfortunate fortune to get into their midst. But it's a this thing has a reputation for being violent, and it's actually not that graphic. They don't show a lot of what they do, but what is there is just absolutely terrifying and unsettling. And like I said, the reason it's so effective is because it looks real, and just the way he shoots it with the grain and the washed out Texas landscape and everything just looks sweaty and oppressive. It's a tough watch, but one that I've watched many, many times because it is so well done.
Interesting. Yeah, that is a great pick. Not on my list, and I'm going to explain why. I'm going to tie it all together when I tell you about my number 1. My number 1 is Pieces, which is a Spanish horror film. The poster tagline was, "You don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre." And it's basically, which starts at the very beginning, and actually it ties into the Snowman, which we'll be talking about next week. But at the beginning of the film, there's a little kid, and he's putting the puzzle together, and the puzzle is an image of a naked woman.
Okay.
His mother walks in, sees him, and beats him, and throws the puzzle, right? And then something horrible happens to her. So we go fast forward 20 years or whatever the hell it is, and there is a killer on a campus who is cutting up people and assembling a woman by taking certain pieces from certain people. Hence the term, the movie title. So, but it is just grindhouse schlock at its best. If it is a ridiculous film, it stars Bluto, and there's no stars, but Bluto's in it from the Popeye movie. He's one of the suspects of being our killer. The ending, it's got a great little pop ending as well that I don't want to get too much into. But it is just, it's so ridiculous, so over the top, so gory, so just unrelentingly sleazy and trashy that it is my number 1. I've got a soft spot in my heart for this thing because it's just so ridiculous, so bad, and yet so entertaining from start to finish.
I've never seen it, so I guess I'll have to go track it down and see if I can find it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't remember, is it Vinegar Syndrome or... Actually, I think it's Grindhouse Releasing. Grindhouse Releasing put out a really great Blu-ray version of it a couple years ago. I wish I'd known, Matt. I had it on DVD and I sold it. I should have shipped it up to you. But yeah, it's a blast, but it is a weird little film. So why I say that is Pieces leads into, because I kind of did something weird. I didn't couch this for you in the beginning because I could have gone cliche. So if I did my cliche list, Matt, it would have been Pieces would have been number 5, and I would have gone Friday the 13th at 4, Halloween at 3, TCM, Texas Chainsaw Massacre at 2, and then Psycho as 1.
Okay.
But that's so
That's
on
just
the
so
nose,
easy. Yeah, okay, yeah,
lazy kind of. It is.
Yeah.
Those are the ones
Well,
everybody thinks about.
Yeah,
Right?
okay. Well, I will say this. So I left Halloween off because it is in my honorable mentions, because it is the granddaddy of slasher films. It's the one that created the slasher film as we know it. So I had to obviously leave that off. And I left Friday the 13th off because, unpopular opinion, I don't like them. I don't think any of them are any good, and I would not recommend you watch any of them. And I stand by that statement for all however many of them there are.
The first one's good.
They're just not good. No, it's not.
Third one's fun if you can get past the really bad 3D effects, especially if you don't watch it in 3D. And then what's the other good one? Was it 5 or 6? I can't remember. But
See,
yeah,
they're not good.
No, they're not.
They're not terribly good. Hell, the remake I enjoyed more than I enjoyed any of the original films. So let's just put it that way.
I had some honorable mentions as well, but I had to do it because everybody knows all these films. You want to hear something different. That's why The Prowler, The Burning, Inside, Black Christmas is well known, and of course Pieces. Then my honorable mentions were Sleepaway Camp, like you had, Peeping Tom, High Tension, The Hitcher with Rutger Hauer is a great one.
Yeah.
Torso, I think is Spanish as well, and then of course Argento's Deep Red. That was pretty good too. Profondo Russo.
Well, the only thing I would also throw in there, just because I think it's still good, I'm going to throw the original Scream in there too. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's still actually a pretty effective slasher movie.
That's strong. That works. All right, Matt. So shoot us an email, feedback@thefirstrun.com. Who's your favorite monster movie? What's your favorite slasher film? We'd love to hear it. Explain to Matt why Pieces is an all-time classic of sleaze. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Next week, Matt, we are behind. We will be discussing The Snowman, and then what? Are we going to do Jigsaw? Are we going to do it?
Sure. Why does not? Why does let's finish off this Halloween thing on a down note? So here we go.
That's a series I've never liked. I think I've seen
those
3 of them, and not my thing.
Yeah. But we don't have a lot of options, let's be honest.
No. There's Suburbicon, the Clooney film with Damon, that looked interesting to me, but supposedly is atrocious.
Yeah.
We could still do Killing Gunther. I know I want to check that out at some point, the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terror and Gilliam film.
Yeah.
We'll see how everything shakes out. Check us out on YouTube. We are also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, the cleaned up and lovely looking new First Run website, thefirstrun.com. Come check it out. We've made things searchable a lot easier. There's a lot of information, a lot of fun. So check out the site itself. And I guess that's it, Matt. It's going to be the big show.
All right. I do want to mention one thing. I'm looking at the list again. I don't know how in the hell I have Justice League higher than you do. I don't understand how that's possible. On the list you sent me.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't understand how that's. We're gonna have to go back and I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that again because I don't think that's right. That can't possibly.
No, I did because I think I originally had it like at 46 or something like that. But I have 62. You have 72.
That is insane. What the hell was I thinking? I'm gonna lose this thing. Okay. Anyway, have a good week, folks.
Take an extended break, and we'll see you all in a week. See ya.
Wake up! Lady, give that man his purse back.
It's my purse! He's the thief!
That was a clip from They Call Me Bruce. Some guy rips off the woman's purse and he chases him down and says, "Lady."
All right.
All right, let's see here. Let's set up the next show. Huh?
I was actually kind of hoping that, based on your little Foreigner comment at the earlier, that you were going to close out with a little clip of Foreigner.
I thought about it. But I didn't want to risk the licensing issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd have to have critiqued from Foreigner for it to count. So.
Oh, okay. I thought we got 30 seconds. I thought we could use 30 seconds without.
Oh, is that it? Oh, maybe.
Wow. Maybe. I don't know.
What's your favorite Foreigner song? Do you have one?
Yeah, I probably do. I forget but none of them are coming to mind. Let's see here. I obviously don't love them as much as you do.
Feels like the first time. Cold as Ice. Star Rider's a good one. Urgent. I want to know what love is.
Yeah, it's probably I Want to Know What Love Is. I like Urgent too.
I'm going to lead off with Mindhunter or Stranger Things. Do you have a preference?
Let's do Mindhunter because it was much worse. Let's end on a high note.
Okay. How many episodes of Mindhunter have you seen so far? Just the 2?
Just the one.
Just the one, I should say. Okay. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Make sure everything checks out. We good? We good. Okay. Chris Gauser here with
Matt Howell.
This episode of the First Run Focus, we're going to discuss Mindhunter, the new series, on Netflix from David Fincher, as well as season 2 of Stranger Things. We're going to be doing both. Let's just throw this over. This isn't working for me. I screwed that all up. I messed up, boss. I don't know why that got louder. It shouldn't have gotten louder. Okay. Plus, my mic was muted. That's why the intro lasted so much longer. I didn't realize it was. There we go. Chris Gauser here with
Matt Howell.
On this episode of the First Run Focus, Matt and I are going to be discussing Mindhunter, the David Fincher helmed series on Netflix, as well as the return of Stranger Things. We're discussing both episodes, first premiere episodes of each season. So I'm excited to get into this, Matt. Let me ask you. David Fincher going to, well, he did, fuck me. Not cool, man. I'm trying to do too many things at once. Is the problem. Okay. Chris Gauser here with
Matt Howell.
On this episode of the First Run Focus, we're going to dive into some Netflix series, Matt. We're going to discuss David Fincher's Mindhunter, and we're also going to catch up and run down Stranger Things Season 2. Both premiere episodes we'll be discussing this week, and we'll go through the series 1 week at a time, 1 episode at a time. I know, Matt, you've been looking forward to Stranger Things. I've been looking forward to both of these. I mean, Fincher, right, Matt? You can't go wrong with Fincher with this kind of stuff.
We love Fincher.
So there's a lot to get into, Matt. Let's start everything off, though. Here is a clip from Mindhunter.
It's not easy butchering people. It's hard work. Physically and mentally, I don't think people realize you need to vent. You know, there's a lot more like me. Do you think so?
40 years ago, your FBI was founded hunting down John Dillinger. Now, we have extreme violence between strangers.
We travel around the country and teach FBI techniques to cops.
You guys mind if I bother you for a minute? She was found cuffed and lashed to the bed.
What people won't do to each other. There's nothing people won't do.
How can we help? We should be using every resource we can, talking to the smartest people we find from the broadest possible spectrum.
Are criminals born? Or are they formed?
All right, Matt. So Mindhunter. So we have it's what are we, Matt? The 70s, 1977, in the FBI, and we're just really starting to get into the, how would you call it? Just the psychoanalysis of these weird killings out there. You know, they're not motivated by passion or money or whatever the case may be, revenge. They're just people who just, there's something very deeply wrong with them. And we have Holden Ford and Bill Tench, particularly Holden Ford, played by Jonathan Groff, who wants to meet with these killers. He wants to meet the Charles Mansons and talk to them to try and get an understanding, because that way then maybe if they understand how these serial killers, how their minds work, that maybe they'll have a better job of detecting why they do that and then finding them and catching them.
Mm-hmm.
So Fincher is leading this series. He's the executive producer. He's directed, I think, I don't know, at least one or two of the episodes so far. At least, listen, I'll be straight with you. I've seen 2, and he's directed the first 2. So we're going to talk about the first one today, though. So, Matt, why don't you can you fill us in on episode 1? And I mean, what's happening?
Well, essentially, a young FBI agent who is a specialist in hostage negotiation, he gets called back into Quantico after an unsuccessful negotiation, and he gets asked to go teach a class on hostage negotiation to the recruits at Quantico. And he's very interested in psychology and kind of thinking about why people think the way they do, why criminals think the way they do, and kind of challenging the idea of crimes. I guess back then they thought was that they either happened because of need or greed, as he puts it. You know, they're doing something for your own personal gain, where they're now seeing things like killers like Manson, like the son of Sam, who there's no real discernible motive to why they're doing these things. So he's kind of figuring out through how he can go through behavioral science units, you know, working through classes on universities, talking to psychologists, and you know, to try and figure out if they can build out a way to like profile these kind of people, so they can have better luck at catching them in the future.
There you go. So earlier, just general discussions that you and I have had right before we recorded this show for about 10 seconds. I feel you are unimpressed with the first episode of Mindhunter. Would that be an accurate description?
Yeah, I was, and I don't know why this was. I mean, I'm a big fan of David Fincher. I love David Fincher's work, and I was really excited to talk about this because this is something that's right in my wheelhouse as far as he goes. And it looks really good, but I don't know what it is. It seems a little off. I wasn't connecting with any of the characters really. I didn't think any of them were particularly compelling. You know, Jonathan Groff as Holden Ford just seems very milquetoast. Anna Torv as Wendy Carr. You know, again, not particularly compelling. She kind of seems like a cipher, kind of like the, you know, hard, you know, woman, academic woman. I don't even know what the type she's trying to play to, but it doesn't seem like an actual fleshed out character. And just everything seems very kind of clumsy, and maybe that's intentional because of what they're trying to do is trying to create something that doesn't exist and doesn't have a lot of backing to it. But it was, I don't know, maybe there's more to come. Maybe when they actually start talking to the serial killers and the people that they've arrested, and kind of diving into their minds, maybe it'll become more interesting. But this first episode was very tenuous. It was a lot of scene setting and a lot of table setting, but it wasn't, I don't really see where it's going at this point.
I think that's part of the issue, is with a lot of this stuff too. With the first episode, you have to set everything up, right? You have to put the characters in place. You have to set the chessboard, show us how everything's kind of shake out, introduce the characters. There's just a lot of ground to cover in the first episode of a show. So I gotta admit too, part of it is I didn't know what the show was really going to be. Like, I knew generally what it was, but was it going to be just your kind of Law and Order procedural type thing, or was it going to be more focusing on the killers? I wasn't quite sure how it's all going to work out. And even the first episode kind of lays the ground and shows you what we're going to do. But let me tell you, Matt, I was hooked from the first episode. Really? I think actually that Fincher does a fantastic job. Now, I get what you're saying about some of the cast, particularly Groff. But I think it's more for me, just he's interested in this stuff, but there's still a greenness to him. It's still he's still young and figuring stuff out. He's fascinated by this subject and he wants to learn more. But I think there is a I don't know I'm not even sure how to put it. I just enjoyed his performance. I thought he was good. I think perhaps his girlfriend is not quite as strong or fully fleshed out a character. But again, I think we're, like I said, Matt, we're putting the chess pieces in movement. We're just setting up the board right now. The first episode did hook me really well, so much that I watched the second one immediately afterwards. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. I need to watch this. And Matt, when you get to that second episode, it's all going to snap into focus for you. And it is...
All right.
It is fantastic. I don't want to. That's next week, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I'm telling you, it is. I don't know. I would have kept going. Of course, it was 1 a.m. at that point.
Right.
But it was, yeah. So for me, this is vintage Fincher. This is right. Now, here's the thing, though. I love Zodiac. Not a lot of people do.
I do too.
So this has that feel to it. I'm not just talking because of the set designs and the time frame and all that stuff. It just has that kind of feel to it. It's this modern day kind of noir shadows and darkness and characters. But another thing too, Holt McCallany. If you're not familiar with Holt McCallany, he plays the other FBI agent Bill Tench. So Ford and Tench kind of, they like each other, but it's just an interesting relationship dynamic that I think is going to be really fruitful for the show as it plays out. Tench is he's the how do you describe him? He's a behavioral science guy for the FBI, and he's the one that's been going around to all the police departments all over the country and kind of teaching them all the stuff that they're starting to learn with all the serial killers and challenging their ideas about motive, and maybe there isn't really even going to be one when it comes to a murder.
Right.
But he's one of these, for me, one of my favorite character actors. Whenever he would show up, I would always like, oh, this is going to be good. I think he's always delivered for me, and I think he does the same here. So I was really excited to see him pop up in this. And of course, Anna Torv will be showing up a little later, which I did not know about until a couple days ago, from Fringe. Okay. Which is, if you haven't seen Fringe, I think it's on Amazon for streaming.
Yeah, I think so.
I loved Fringe, so you should check that out. I'm a big Anna Torv fan, though she's not in the first episode, so she's going to show up later. I'm not quite sure what her role is going to be. So, but again, I really enjoyed this first episode. You're right; it's handicapped a little bit because we have to establish our universe, but it's strong, and I really enjoyed it, and I could not wait to see what was coming next.
All right, so with that, I'm going to watch it again, and I'm going to watch the second episode immediately after it, and then maybe my opinion will change somewhat. But just based on the merits of that, I've only seen the first episode. As much as I love David Fincher, it had strong points, but wasn't 100% sold. And what'll be really interesting is to see, I was looking at the episode list here, is that Fincher did the first 2 and the last 2 episodes, so we'll be interested to see what the other 3 directors who are involved in the other 6 episodes, how they do.
Yeah, I am intrigued by that. But I would give this thing a B+ for me. For episode 1, gets a B+.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a B-. Again, it's good, but I had some serious problems with it, so we'll see how it goes.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on then, Matt. You want to talk about a little Stranger Things action? Is there anything you wanted to add to Mindhunter?
No, I'm good. Let's talk about Stranger Things. Let's head back to the 80s. Actually,
I can't wait. Yeah, or go back to the future. Yeah,
right. Exactly.
I can't wait for you to see episode 2 of this thing. All right, let's hear a clip from Stranger Things.
Let's go back to the beginning.
I told you everything.
I understand this is difficult, Michael.
I don't know where she is. And even if I did, I'd never tell you. I would never tell you.
No, it's difficult to accept. She's a very dangerous individual.
If she contacts you, you must tell us.
Otherwise, you're putting yourself and your entire family at risk. Do you understand, Michael?
Michael.
So, Matt, I think that's one of the big questions for this first episode, the return of Stranger Things. Where is 11? Where is she, Matt?
I mean, do you want me to actually say where she is, or was that just a hypothetical question?
So how spoilerific do we want to be for Stranger Things?
You know what? Stranger Things, here's the thing. It's on Netflix. I mean, you know what? People might have already watched like the whole thing. They might have just sat down and watched the whole thing all night. Like, so I think we're okay being spoilery a little bit, right? But if we give it a little spoiler warning, I think we'll be all right.
Well, let's pocket 11 because they torture us and don't give us any information on 11 until the end of the damn show.
Right.
So it's one of the big questions I had. Because remember at the end of season 1, she just disappears. Right,
she
man?
does. She does.
After they stop and kill or stop whatever the hell that plant Venus flytrap monstrous looking thing is.
Demigorgon. It's called the Demigorgon.
Thank you. I'm not very clever. So this episode, Matt, is called Chapter 1, Mad Max.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of changes here in the Stranger Things universe. We're introduced to a whole bunch of new characters. Sean Astin shows up. Paul Reiser revisiting his Aliens character exceptionally well. We have a new woman named Max, a young lady at the high school who has beaten Dustin's score on Dig Dug, which he is crestfallen about. And then, of course, for me, one of my favorite kind of comedians, Brett Gelman, shows up as he's an investigative reporter. Is that what he is? Is Murray?
Yes.
Listen,
yeah. Or in like the local town. I think he like writes for the local underground zine or something.
All right. So if you're a Comedy Bang Bang fan, which I am a huge fan of, the Brett Gelman episodes on CBB are some of my favorites because the two of them basically play off each other, meant like they can't stand each other. So there's always this tension between the two of them for the full like hour when they talk. It is hilarious, awkward, unsettling. They're just I can't recommend those episodes enough. So you got to check them out. All right. In fact, I think he was just on a couple months ago, so you can still listen to that one easily. All right, Matt. Stranger Things. So tell us, Matt, what's going on with our favorite kids in the Stranger Things universe?
So flash forward, I'm not quite sure how many months have passed since the events of the end of the last.
It says on the Wikipedia.
Okay. So it's almost a year later. Boys are all back together. They're all back in school. Life is moving along relatively normally. They're into the arcades. They're all into kind of the normal geeky boy stuff from the 80s. Essentially, Will is having these flashbacks to the Upside Down where he keeps getting these visions of the world being infected by the Upside Down and something evil and malicious coming to take over and destroy the world. Coupled with that, you have new girl in town that they all get obsessed with, and they're all very curious with, and they start to follow her around. And then the most important thing that happens, Dustin finally has some teeth, and he talks about them quite a bit throughout the entire episode.
Yeah, so where do you come down on the Stranger Things, Matt? What do you think of this return episode here? Listen, here's a problem. This thing was a massive success.
It was.
It tickles the funny bones. It gets us right in our good spot, Matt, specifically you and I, because it's 80s. It's got the synth score. It's got all the stuff that we love, and it's done exceptionally well. So, but there's always sequelitis, right? Can you live up to those expectations? Are you going to trip up? Are you going to go too big? What's going to happen? I got to tell you, Matt, for me so far, I'm good.
I'm right there with you.
I think it sounds this year too like they really splurged on the 80s music budget. I think we had like 4 or 5 songs from the 80s in this premiere episode, which is always good with me. I still think for me, one of my favorite parts of this show is David Harbour. I love Harbour as the what's his name? Hooper?
Yeah,
as Jim Hopper, not Hooper. He's the sheriff. I think he's one of the strongest points of the show. I can't wait to see what he does with Hellboy. I'm really interested in that, and I'll be happy to not have Winona Ryder. I don't want to say hysterical because at this point that's almost a sexist term, but I would like to have a strong kick butt Winona Ryder in this role, and she has a new love interest, of course, played by Sean Astin.
Nice.
We'll have to see what's going on. Do you have any sinister motives out of Sean Astin? Initially I was like, he's gonna a love interest for Joyce, which is great. But we introduced new characters. Not everybody's gonna be good. Obviously, we know Paul Reiser's up to something. He plays the doctor who is helping Will because Will's having these visions.
Right.
And they're going back to that company though, which I think is interesting for the visions. They do the thing. Well, you can trust me. All those people are gone now.
Right.
But of course, they're not.
Yeah. So
Sean
I don't.
Astin.
I'm not getting evil vibes from Sean Astin. I don't think he's like a plant or anything like that. If that's what we're suggesting.
That's what I'm thinking, because then they have somebody in with the family.
Right. I don't see him being a plant, but I can see him being kind of like the Weasley outsider. Like he doesn't really belong to the family, and the family's very tight knit. And then I can see him getting freaked out by stuff that's happening to Will, and him either betraying them, or agreeing to be a spy, or selling them out in some way. So I think that's more likely what's going to happen. But I don't think he's a plant.
Okay, fair enough. So how do you feel about the relationship between Nancy Wheeler and Steve Harrington there with the sister, Will's sister?
Yeah.
Not Will's. Is it Will's sister? Will's sister.
No,
not Will. What's his name? Mike's sister. So in the end of season 1, right, we're thinking maybe she's gonna hook up with Will's brother, but she ends up sticking with the popular kid.
Right. You know what? I like the way they did it. I mean, I think she's still with the guy she was with before, and she still seems to be working through him. But at the same time, it's not like they're not friends with Will's brother. I think it was a good way that they're handling it. I mean, you can tell that he's still into her, and I don't think she's oblivious enough not to know that. But I mean, she's still his friend or whatever. So I mean, obviously, it has a potential for a cheesy love triangle, but I'm hoping they kind of avoid some of those pitfalls. But I think right now, the way, at least from the first episode, I think they're handling it pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, they introduce a lot of subplots in this first episode, right? Like we said before with Mindhunter, we gotta set the chessboard up. There's a lot going on. There's the family of the missing girl who didn't make it out of the Upside Down. Of course, I'm blanking on what was her name again?
Barb, man, justice for Barb.
Barb, thank you. And they're selling their house to pay for, I'm assuming it's Murray, do his investigation, which of course we'll see if that turns into anything. But there's a lot going on. There's the introduction of 8. What do you think's going on with 8? So the show actually opens with a robbery. Is it a bank? I'm not even quite sure. Yeah. It's a robbery of something. And there's this group of kids are on the run. The cops are chasing them down. And then there's a woman in the car, in the van, who makes the chasing cops, one of them, think that the overpass is going to collapse, and he stops, and they all get in an accident. They get away. And then as they pull out, you see that she has an 8 tattooed on her arm. So because we know we got 11.
Yes.
So there had to be
10 more.
Exactly. So we are introduced to 8. Now I'm curious to see if that's going to go anywhere. Are we going to see, Matt, 1 through 10? What do you think? Are we going to focus on 8?
I don't know. I think we might focus, maybe, because there were other people in that car. So I mean, who knows? Maybe those could have been 6, 7, 8, and they're with her. So I don't know.
Not the impression I got. Not the impression I got.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to broaden into the broader conspiracy. Although again, at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if 11 and 8 were the only ones that were left. The other ones are dead or monsters or something.
Fair enough. Anything you want to add, or we want to move on to 11?
No. I think no. Let's talk about 11. Let's talk about Eggos.
So that's the closer. David Harbour. Hopper returns home. There's a tripwire that he walks over. He's got a whole thing set up. He's got a secret knock. Matt, what's going on? Why? Who's staying at his cabin?
Well, he somehow, for however this happened, since we're only talking about episode 1, he has got 11. He's hid her away in the cabin, and they're kind of like a weird little family unit that he's protecting her out in the woods.
And it was adorable. She had eaten her waffles before her dinner, and she gets lovingly chastised for doing so.
That's right.
It looks like we're going to find out what happened, Matt, because episode 2 started to autoplay, and it basically picks up at the school when everything's going to happen and she's on the ground. Okay. So I turned it off real fast, but it looks like we're going to find out at least a bit of it.
Right.
Season 2. So I think that's good. I don't want to go a few episodes without finding out how she got to Hopper's cabin. I'd like to kind of get that out of the way, and let's just jump into everything. So that'll be good. So, all right, where are you coming down? Season 2, episode 1 of Stranger Things. Matt, you give a what grade?
I'm giving it a B+. It started off right off the bat. It hasn't missed a beat. I was kind of sucked right back into it. I love the stuff with Will and the kind of upside down thing and how ominous that looks. So I think they're right on track. Obviously, it's a lot of scene setting, so I'll knock it a little bit for that, but it's a necessary evil. It was very.
I
very
love
good
the
episode.
creepy spider-looking thing coming
yeah.
out of the sky, whatever that
Yeah.
is. I'm really kind of curious to see how this turns out. Have they opened up a door? Is something coming? I give it an A-, Matt. I really enjoyed this episode as well. I can't wait to see what we got coming up this season. Again, remember, folks, we're going to go week by week. We're not going to binge this thing.
Yeah.
I think, and we can talk about that at some point too. Is that the way to go? Is binging the way to go? Or is it better enjoyment-wise to go week by week?
Honestly, for something like this, if I get really into it, I'm gonna want to binge it. So that's the danger,
Fair enough. All right, that's it. We've discussed Mindhunter and Stranger Things here on the First Run Focus. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Check us out, of course, on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. You can find us, and of course, there's thefirstrun.com itself. Matt, that was kind of fun. I can't wait to talk about. I got to say though, I am more excited to hear your reactions to Mindhunter episode 2, but of course, I haven't seen Stranger Things episode 2, so maybe that's why. Either way, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So we'll take a little break, and we'll see you guys all soon. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Now talking is cheap.